Hello, and welcome back to the channel. We are in an interesting spot. Last time, we had a look at whether or not the claim that there are certain states or experiences that are beyond words makes sense. Are there some things or some levels of being or states of being like God that are not understandable because they are beyond the scope of words? And last time we saw that Jesus thought that about his transfiguration experience of divine luminosity, but Socrates somehow had the wisdom, the skill to lead him through a short dialectic to put a few words on that experience, making it understandable. So we ended with the hypothesis: it's not that some experiences are beyond words, it's just that there is a different use of words or a different category of words that applies to different states of being. Here is the map we ended up with. The difficulty that we saw Jesus having is he had an experience of this Venn diagram in the middle, mind turning around to know itself as divine luminosity, but the logos or language or words that are used to make sense of that is not part of his culture and his friend circle. We've seen the reason in the text is because his culture doesn't have a word for the. And this specific realm of mind is where we find the things that we describe as substantives. Whereas in the physical world of becoming, excuse me, still getting over my cold, we find adjectives. We see a beautiful puppy, we see a beautiful painting. But philosophy is asking the question, not what is a beautiful thing as an adjective, but what's the substantive? What is the beautiful itself? The language for addressing that kind of question is metaphysics or philosophy. That's the logos of that realm. Now there is a use of logos or language for our physical realm, which won't be able to make sense of this experience. So if that's all you're familiar with, you might conclude it's just beyond words. Our conclusion was it's beyond this use of words. Similarly, there is another state, because in the text, Socrates points out that this state of knowingness or ousia, which allows you to, using this Venn diagram, yourself as the yellow, experience everything that exists, or the highest experience in the purple, the overlap of the yellow and the purple. This is, by the way, this is what philosophy is the study of. So that's also what metaphysics is. And if you tell stories or create a mythology to remember and communicate that, that's theology. So theology is the mythology or the analogies and personification of this. But as we can see, there is still this part of the Venn diagram up the top. The thing itself, prior to or beyond its having the quality of existence. Or another way of wondering about that state of being, the self itself beyond experience or prior to existence. So if you are in this greatest experience, you can have the question, what is it that's experiencing it? Or what is its cause? Now that, of course, at every level, there's people who say, oh, my current state can't be understood. So I can't go beyond my state of being, wherever you're at. One common puzzle is, among philosophers, is this level up here, the one or the good. Because normally, language has applied to things that are in this purple circle. Things that exist or things that we experience. Or using that Venn diagram, you could say a whole of parts. Or with belief, just the parts. So referring back to our earlier diagram. Of the same Venn diagram, it's always the same Venn diagram, it just gets a bit messy with, like this one here. You could say it's a whole of parts. You'd say same and different. You could say one and many. You could say rest and motion. These are the pairs that are the building blocks of understanding and thought and creation, and everything that exists is whole and part, one and other, or self and other, one and different, one and many, same and different. And it's in that section where we only see parts and we ourselves infer the whole that we get our human problems, our beliefs, our fake model of reality which is here and self which is here. That becomes our mask, our ego, some people say, and our life becomes the playing out of the implications of that false belief about self that we have identified with, and the false belief about reality. And our functioning based on that model is ignorance, which is in opposition to our own development. Some people ask, why do so many people, and especially belief-based thinkers, religious folk, fascist folk, conservative folk, why are they insisting on things that harm them? Why do they lick the boots for the billionaire warmongers or the robber baron oligarchs? Why do they vote against their own interests? Because this is the functioning of that cognitive function called belief, which has to be in opposition to understanding and knowing, the two together, wisdom. It has to be in opposition to the self up here, otherwise it wouldn't need to exist. So it's a transitional cognitive stage of functioning, which is just a fancy way of saying a way of making sense of the world from caveman times, before we could reason and reflect. It would be a blind believer rather than understanding for yourself and knowing for yourself and knowing the self. That's where we were last time. Therefore, we can infer as a hypothesis that there is a way of using words that apply to the physical world of becoming because everything's in change. There is a way of using words that apply to the eternal realm of being or mind. It's that use of words that we call understanding. Understanding is, and by the way, there's the use of words or activity or logos, but then there's the model for each of the realms. So understanding is the logos built off the model of knowing. So all the Lego pieces we use to understand things, causes, principles, whole, part, same, different, whether or not it's beautiful or fake, just or unjust, true or false. All of those words that we use or terms that we use in understanding exist here eternally. In other words, we can use understanding to make sense of our physical world, but understanding doesn't itself change if our physical world changes. Whereas belief is a different way of making sense of the physical world, but of course that does change based on the opinions of the leader. So if we ended all Abrahamic religions tomorrow, there is 0% chance that they'll come back exactly as they were before, because it's based on personal beliefs and opinion. Ignorance. Whereas if we ended, if we stopped using the ideas of same and different, whole and part, like and unlike tomorrow, well, they'd come back the next day. Because they don't change based on the physical world, they have their own existence as substantives or nouns. And our job is to use our understanding to revert upon the nature of understanding, which is a kind of meditation which opens us up to know ourselves as mind. But in the text, Jesus said, well, that experience of divine luminosity, I call it the transfiguration experience, and it's beyond, you can't explain it. But we know it's because the Hebrew people did not have a word for the, so they couldn't look for the whole, the part, the same, the different. They could only look for a same group of people who are at war with a different group of people, and a whole banana, and a whole loaf of bread and fishes. In other words, they could only use, without the word the, they could only look to particulars, not the substantive or the noun. So they were blocked from developing understanding. Understanding can be used to understand beliefs as well. So understanding is the tool that we can use to purify our ignorance of belief, as well as perfect our own excellence or activity or understanding by using our understanding to understand the model, which is what we're doing here. But we can also use understanding to reflect on this and say, hang on a second, that same movement from adjectives to nouns, beautiful puppy, beautiful streamer, to beauty itself, can be applied here. Because all of these words are beauty itself, justice itself, whole itself. Meaning we've got another adjective we're using to describe these. Self. Meaning there's one more movement, the movement from mind to knowing the self, which is our goal. Know yourself. How do you know what you really are? The opposite of people in belief who pretend or have that state of being of certainty where they're certain, I know what I am. And it's that I'm a small bean in a bad noodle. I'm a sinner. That kind of garbage. That's interesting because people who talk about, people who are familiar with the idea of the one or the good often say that it's beyond words. But this theory shows, well, it's not beyond words. It's beyond the use of words that applies to anything that is or existing, or the use of words applying to anything in experience, because those two use of words, here and here, fit in this purple circle. And we're looking for that which is beyond the purple. So that's the conversation being had. And then it finished with Socrates saying something really neat. He said, by the way, there's a principle of truth. The law of truth requires those who know the same, say the same, about the same. So there's a requirement. So as we've been learning this, and as we learn this, and as we master this, and as we benefit from this, there is a requirement to speak, to open your mouth and talk about it. Don't leave it all up for this guy to do. I'm not the most charismatic and charming person on the planet, but maybe you are.
Do a poggers.
Do a poggers. Say the same about the same. Knowing the truth, we then speak the same truth, says Socrates. Yesterday we did a quick review of the dialectic once more. It's always worth doing, considering it's the skill that we're here to master. And by the way, when you use the skill to benefit, you can call it an art. It's what art is for the Greeks. In our current materialist culture, without any idea of benefit, therefore allowing the fascists and the capitalists to destroy everyone in the world, we say things like there is no meaning of art. Who's to say what art is? There's an ad that kept popping up on Twitch. Nailing a banana to a wall is art. Maybe. To mock the idea of art, which is the cognitive function of strict dualism. So while there's a model and activity for each of these levels, you could say that this activity, in opposition to a true model of benefit and truth, is strict dualism. There's only parts, there's no whole. Or materialism, there's only the material world. Or reductionism, everything meaningful we can just reduce to stapling a banana on a wall. These are all different ways of rejecting mind. Strict dualism is the name for that cognitive function. Belief is the model. You have a false belief about reality that you are using unknowingly to make those claims. Those who embrace that belief and say, I am a believer, or whatever belief they have, that's the fourth cognitive function of belief. Both of which are in opposition to our benefit, so we call it ignorance. Understanding is number 3. Knowing the model is number 2. And our question is, well, what is the model and the activity of the higher? That's our question. And we're using these numbers 5. You might say, hang on a second, shouldn't it be 6, 5, 4, 3, and 2, and 1? Yes, that would make more sense. But we already have the 5th hypothesis of Parmenides that breaks down this cognitive function in great depth. He does a dialectic on each one of these. So then the numbers that we have assigned, we pick because they align with the hypotheses of Parmenides, called the greatest book never read. And now you can see why. It's a dialectic on the fundamental, on all the possible ways of thinking humans can have. Maybe, and I say maybe because maybe there's a higher one he leaves out. That's our question in the book. So, we were talking about people who reject the idea of truth. And we can say, oh, that's easy, you're a strict dualist, you're number 5. You're still under the influence of your beliefs from your family, about yourself, about reality. In order to reject the nature of self, being objective and transcendent, the first cause, the highest idea of God, and believing yourself to be something small and physical and not that transcendent, means you are carrying a false belief about yourself. It's not real, not true. Equally so, for you to say reality doesn't have a consciousness or isn't knowable, or there aren't these principles that are eternal that we can insist on for politicians. Everything is just whatever you want it to be, and just let the fascists take over like the establishment left. As a belief. Notice that belief doesn't exist in other professions. Never ever do we say, oh, well, there is no actual understanding of the principles of medicine that are objective and universal and anyone can understand and are verifiable in experience. No, it's just whatever you want it to be. And if you want to pretend to be a surgeon, then that's just as true as anything else. How crazy is that shit? That's what we allow for politicians and religion. Oh, and parents. Nowhere else. Nowhere else. Can't say, well, I decide I'm a doctor today. Give me the scalpel, I'm gonna cut open some babies. What? No. No. That's not how medicine works. It's not how any profession works. That's only politics and religion and how you treat your own children. Insanity, right? Shouldn't we insist on understanding for the most important jobs? Oh, and what do you know? It's the absolute worst human beings who gravitate towards those positions of power over others based on belief, religion, and politics. So we can understand human problems, but we can also understand what's needed to solve them. So, understanding can turn back and encourage the reflection upon what we have been carrying as our unsuspected false beliefs about self and reality. That skill is the dialectic. And because it benefits, it's an art. So tailoring your specific skill of understanding to meet people where they're at in a way that benefits their soul's development, that's what turns a skill into an art. It's what art means. Different from people down here who are in ignorance and say there is no such thing as art, it's just a banana stapled on a wall or some bullshit. Or it's just Pokemon cards for the mega rich to launder money. There's no meaning to art. No, that's what art is. Art is having an understanding based on a model that's universal and objective and true. Using the model and the activity, the understanding and the knowing together, the ideal and the whole and its parts together. Lots of ways of saying that. Knowing it as a whole, understanding its parts. Using that together to benefit not yourself, like politicians and clergy, which is corruption, the cause of human suffering collectively, and ignorance, and savagery, but to benefit the subject, not you. That's an art. So, we need to insist on politicians and clergy to have art. Always, forever, and never to be benefiting themselves. The exact opposite of the corrupt society we live in currently under capitalism. And materialism. Hey, surely religion doesn't do any harm. Just allow all religions to exist. That's surely not child abuse.
A space wizard farted out the universe. All humans are inbred from a single pair of humans, not once but twice. If you're a naughty person, you get tortured eternally in a pool of lava by a vindictive genocidal deity who loves you.
That stuff, child abuse. By definition, it's not an opinion, what it is. And why are we saying that? Because Those who know the same say the same about the same. Knowing the truth, we speak the same truth. There is no way we can grow up and wake up to what's needed to solve our problems individually and collectively unless the people who know the truth speak up about the truth. Doesn't make you popular because, oh hey, welcome some guy. Because the nature of ignorance, belief, and materialism functions in opposition to understanding and knowing or wisdom. So when you know the truth and you have an understanding, a language of it so you can speak it, you're not going to be the most popular kid in town. You're not going to have the 50,000 viewers that Asmongold has. But you'll have one person in chat saying hi, and that'll be good enough. But it's required. We need to speak the truth because that's what, without that, we're not going to be able to change and grow. Individually, yourself, fulfilling your purpose of your existence here on Earth, but also benefiting the species that we are a part of. The law of truth requires those who know the same, say the same, about the same. Knowing then the truth, we speak the same truth. But now, exciting, we have the haters. The chorus. The chorus says, now they need a perfect language to tell their lies. Tie that up with this talk about fantasy, and you have another mess. You say cultivate fantasy and be a philosopher. What utter nonsense this is. No philosopher ever said anything worthwhile because words can't carry meaning any more than pigs can whistle or meatballs bounce. Boo! We hate thinking. Boo! That's the haters. So, perfect language, they're referring to the fact that Jesus wasn't able to make sense of his transfiguration experience because he lacked the language. He lacked some specific keywords, but he lacked a culture where they were doing what we do here, reflecting on the nature of being, the model of understanding, the Lego pieces for everything. So he thought, well, it's just not understandable, which may have been the fundamental, well, may have been a fundamental cause in why he had his disaster. In the Gospel of Mark, we see Jesus having his transfiguration experience, his brilliant light of being experience, and then going straight back into his beliefs. So having this experience here, and then going, identifying with Elijah, getting on a donkey, trying to fulfill the prophecy, claiming to be the king of the Jews, and never speaking up when people said that that's what he wanted to do. So he became a kind of political, what was the word? There's a word for it. Trying to assert power. I think it was in the book. So his problem, without a language to make sense of it, the language he picked up to make sense of it was his language of his ignorance, his beliefs. I must be Elijah. I got to get on a donkey. I got to become the next political ruler of the people. Ending in his tragic end. No, a tragic, as we saw in the text, a tragic story ends with the tragic hero realizing his end was as a result of his own problematic way of being. There's that realization at the end. He didn't have that. So it's a pathetic, the word for it is a pathetic tale. He blamed God. God, you were supposed to do what I say, but you've not done that. You've abandoned me. And of course, we know the resurrection story was not in the original text. It was added hundreds of years later by the church to distract from that point. So we need a language to make sense of our experience. Ooh. Can I say something about this that I think gets overlooked? No one actually knows what Jesus said because Jesus never wrote his own ideas down. I don't believe his biographies are genuine. The same thing can be said for Socrates. Okay, well, first of all, we're about, how many pages in? We're about 190 pages into the book, and we've already gone through the different accounts of Jesus. We've gone through a bunch of them. We've examined the story of Mark in detail because Matthew and Luke copy Mark. Most of what they do is just a copy of Mark. We've gone into Paul. Paul is important because Paul takes the writings of the accounts of Jesus and completely lies about everything. While Jesus in the stories told about Jesus in the other Gospels, Jesus talks about the significance of understanding his parables, which is similar to actual philosophy, actual learning, the use of analogies to unpack questions and to develop understanding through analogies. He talked about the kingdom of God being a state of mind. There are stories of Jesus being wrong about things and other people around him being smarter than him. Whereas Paul came along and said, hey, this idea of understanding to develop a state of knowingness that he's calling the kingdom of God or heaven, screw that horseshit. It's just belief. Have faith. Just believe. And Paul said, by the way, I am higher than Jesus. God appointed me. So Paul's what we call a wolf in sheep's clothing. He claims to speak for Jesus while completely saying the opposite, venerating belief and denying what Jesus said about understanding and direct experience. Modern Christians are Pauline. If you ever listen to an evangelist or an American preacher or a Pentecostalist or any politician or any grifter, they always quote Paul. Never Mark. Then we looked at John and how John started with the first couple of sentences doing okay, but then his job was to back up Paul. So Mark recognized what Paul was doing and said, screw that shit. So Mark's role was a denier of the denier. Then we got into some of the Gospels from the, what are they called? The Gnostic Gospels that were discovered in the 60s. So the church buried a whole bunch of Gospels that didn't align with their desire to oppress people through belief. Remember, the cognitive function that's the cause of oppression and man's suffering is belief. Believing me. Don't understand for yourself. Be a slave. Don't know. Just wait till you die and give me all your stuff in the meantime. So, there are a bunch of Gospels written by people like Thomas, who was Jesus' twin brother. He wrote a Gospel. There was James. He was around. He wrote a Gospel. And we see in these, they're called Gnostic Gospels because they, again, it's not about belief at all. It's about developing understanding so you can know. Gnostic as in noesis, which means knowing. But you're right, a problem is they didn't write it down themselves. So while Jesus is specifically talking about his transfiguration experience, which is the key moment in the Gospel of Mark's story of Jesus, again copied by Luke and Matthew, the thing that Paul tried to distract people from, don't think about, you can't know it for yourself, just have faith, then you get to go to heaven. That's Paul. He wanted to make the world, the circumcised and uncircumcised, bring them together in a one Jewish religion under him. Modern Christians are Pauline Jews, by definition. But you're right, he left it for other people who haven't had this brilliant light of being experience, or divine luminosity in philosophy, or transfiguration, as what Jesus calls it, which is the act of turning your mind around to know itself directly all at once. So that was pretty much the first issue that Jesus and Socrates talked about, because that's what makes them the same. The difference between Socrates and Jesus is Socrates was killed by us as he was about to write stuff down. In his last days in the Phaedo, he talked about his dreams telling him, you've got to write mythology, son. You've got to write stuff down. And Socrates said, well, I'm not very good at making poetry and mythology and stuff. So I'm going to take Aesop's fables and I'm going to add the logos in, add understanding in. But we killed him because we're savages. We are fiercely loyal to our own personal beliefs that are in opposition to understanding. So even though the best human being to walk the planet was walking around, the people killed him because it challenged their own personal ignorance. So you're right, they both didn't write it down and they left it for others to write down. But fortunately, Socrates had Plato. Plato did seem to be able to have that divine luminosity experience. And he was a very, very smart person, so he was able to remember and write down the conversations that Socrates had with other people like Parmenides, who not only had this experience that Plato was able to have, the divine luminosity, or the idea or experience of the good, idea of the good in the Greek, which means to have the experience of the good, experience in the purple, or the experience of the one, or the experience of self. But Socrates said in the conversation Socrates had with Diotima, who was Socrates' teacher, said, hey, that's just the starting point. It's from there you can begin giving birth to true excellence of the self. So you can say Plato reached divine luminosities and Socrates reached the self. One of the reasons why Plato wasn't able to go on to reach the self was because of his blocks, his own personal beliefs blocking him. The art of using understanding to remove our false beliefs is called philosophical midwifery. It's a term that Socrates made because his mum was a midwife of babies, helping people give birth to their false ideas of self and reality to remove them. But Plato was only like 20 when we killed his teacher, meaning he wasn't able to learn the two skills needed, the two uses of the dialectic to remove their false beliefs: philosophical midwifery and dream analysis. You need both. So, Plato's student Aristotle wasn't even able to reach divine luminosity. So you can use these three figures as a handy way of remembering the states of enlightenment. Ignorance, Aristotle, which our modern education system is based on, which is the physical world only, beliefs only, in rejection of self and reality. Plato, reaching reality or mind or being. Wisdom. So a philosopher philosophia, love of wisdom, that's wisdom. But we want to go beyond wisdom to Socrates, know the self. And what we're seeing is there's a different language that you can use for each of them, a different logos. And we need a language that allows us to understand each different one. Without that, we'll be limited. Just as Jesus's friends, the Hebrews, didn't have a word for the, meaning they're limited from even reaching divine luminosity. Although Jesus did reach it, they're limited from understanding it in particular. So we need a perfect language. Or, doesn't have to be perfect, just has to have the word the, so we can go from the physical world of descriptions to the realm of reality and the self. We also need the word logos, because logos means more than just logic, which can be applied down here. It's also reason, understanding, language, the dialectic. We need the word ousia, because it's the capacity that our mind has to turn around and know ourselves. And of course, we need the keyword self. The most non-translated word in philosophy, autos. The greatest betrayal is not translating it the way it's supposed to be. It's a good point. So a person has to believe the books of his followers are genuine. I'm skeptic about books of followers of enlightened masters. Yeah, that's good to be skeptical. But by going through a reflection on what they say, being able to ourselves learn the logos, we can recognize, John was able to show a certain amount of understanding, but then we can recognize where his own personal beliefs come in. That's why we read the books we read. We read Socrates, but only the Balboa translation with the actual correct language, and Pierre Grimes. These are two people who have a mastery of the logos on all three levels. Because then whoever else we read, we can use this as the model. So, okay, here he is following understanding, John. But after the second or third sentence, now he starts talking about belief. So we can recognize the level of understanding he's at and the level of problem he's at. As humans, we have both. You could even put it on a graph. You could say, everyone is somewhere along this graph. Your level of vision or state of mind or ousia or knowing, and your level of understanding of that vision. So we can say this is the logos. What's your highest vision of the logos, and what's your level of understanding of it? And then along here, what's your pathologos? What's your false belief of self and reality? Everyone, every human being. So you could say, well, you've got a very high vision up here, but you're very, very addicted to your... So you could say this of Jesus. He had a high vision. His understanding was quite low though. Maybe put it down here. But he was very attached to his religious indoctrination, so along here somewhere. Every author, including Mark, Paul being the worst of course, right down here. The Gnostic Gospels. Now, because vision and understanding are two different things, we should probably make it a three-dimensional graph. Something like this. Maybe. But you get the idea. I still don't understand the assumption that the self is one universal self. Why do they assume that? I don't know if the word assumption is the right word. You're not supposed to assume it. Let me ask you this. Would you agree that you have a self? And I have a self? What makes yourself different from mine? Is it a different color? Does yours have the name of yourself on the corner? Like it's been signed? What qualities does yourself have that makes it different from myself? If we can't find anything, even you say all the selves on earth are part of one self, that doesn't mean universal. No, I'm not saying that. I'm asking you, what would you point to that would distinguish yourself as something different from myself? And I'm asking, is yourself blue? Because then you could say, well, mine's a different color. Personality, what's that? Identity, sure. You identify with something. By the way, is that something that you are or something that you tell yourself? Some people identify with Christians and Mormons and Smiths and Andersons. But I'm asking, what would you point to specifically? Equally, personality. Is a personality something that you are or something you have? At the moment, I identify with the material body. Yeah, so I'm not asking what you identify with. I'm asking what you are, that is self, that makes you different from myself. Not what you believe, just what would you specifically point to? Because beliefs change, right? You're not your beliefs, I hope. Otherwise, how would you grow? And of course, some people have crazy beliefs. I identify as a Freemason. That's not anything. That's just a stupid ass belief. But what specifically is the self? I agree, we're fundamentally the same. Well, that's the idea. But I still don't see that as universal. Well, what do you mean by, what's the difference between same and universal? If there's nothing that you can point to that makes us different, universal, absolute, meaning that we are the same, will be always the same, and for all space and time. But if you can't point to anything that makes us different, what makes it difficult for you to conclude that the self is same? this graph on the board helps. What we're doing is we're engaged in using ousia, which is our capacity to reflect on ourselves. I can, but you will think it's a belief. What do you mean? It's not a matter of what I think, it's a matter of what's true. So we are engaged in using self-reflection or ousia with understanding, which means we're putting logos or words on it. And we're using the specific categories of understanding so we can be guided in an efficient way. I'm asking you about same and difference. You concluded that there's no difference. Therefore, the self must be same, right? But that's the thing, we're not computers. You can't just develop understanding. Now, our goal is to develop understanding, which makes us curious, because if we can conclude it's the same self, we don't know that, because there's a difference between knowing and understanding. It's a likely hypothesis. It's rational. Followed steps of reason. Followed the dialectic. That's why vision and understanding are two different things. But we make use of questions. We make use of giving birth to questions, because now hopefully it's a question. Is the self the same? I was certain that it wasn't. Now I have a question about it. Now I'm in a certain state of mind. But also I've got some understanding or logos in my back pocket. That's the dialectic. We are the same because our origin is the same, but we are different because our destiny is different. Okay, so now you're introducing other ideas. You're introducing the idea of origin. I'm not pointing to origin, I'm just saying, just like, you have a self, right? You said yes. Well, what about that self can you point to that makes yourself different? A different color, a different shape, a different size, different smell. Yeah, supercells are different. I don't know what you mean by supercells, I'm just pointing to the self. See how you have to introduce some new ideas from your own belief system that interrupt from our line of dialogue? You have a certain belief about destiny. You have a certain belief about supercells. Sure. Right. But you have a belief about destiny, right? You believe that we have a different destiny. You haven't experienced destiny, have you? So the point is, we followed a very brief dialectic in that you said that we were the same. That was a conclusion. A conclusion you made. That would help you become curious. That's how to be a philosopher. You take that conclusion as an if, a likely hypothesis, and you take the question in another way we aren't. In what way are we not the same? What can you point to about the self, its color, its shape, that is different from myself? So our job is to give birth to these sorts of questions and carry these hypotheses with us as we read and as we reflect on our dreams. But your super self is different then. So you're introducing an idea of super self. Why do that? I'm not interested in a super self. I'm just interested in the self. I'm having a hard enough time understanding the self than having an idea of super self. But this is the issue. Notice, we are going in this direction. You are encouraged to, the super self is a person. Okay, so now you're introducing your beliefs. That's the difference. We are going in this direction through the dialogue, but you will only be able to go so far until your false belief about self and reality that all human beings have interject. I don't like that. If we're all the same, it would mean that I am not a special member of my family. My family is not a special family. My religion is not the right religion, etc. That's called a block. Notice, instead of following my line of questions, you want to introduce this new idea of super self, which means you want to be the one leading the conversation now. You want me to say, what is this super self? Tell me all of your ideas of super self. Tell me all of your beliefs of the super self. What is the super self? Why? Why not just follow along with the conversation we were already in? That's called a tangent. So as our personal beliefs that we are specifically here as human beings to address arise to block our following of the dialectic, our job is to take note of those tangents and write them down. Because you can't just do the dialectic on truth. The truth about self, the truth of reality, that we bring together through the dialectic as a hypothesis or a likely conclusion that we build on. That is also a meditation, so it opens you up for the vision, so we end up with a understanding and direct experience of the truth. Dialectic provides both. It's the spiritual method and the understanding method. That's the dialectic on truth, but the other part of the graph is what's false. As we do that, our false beliefs that we are carrying about ourselves that we don't even know we're carrying surface to block us. I don't want to continue this conversation about how I can't find anything different. Therefore, because that would mean I'd have to conclude that we're the same. And I don't like the idea that we're the same because I have this other idea of super self. And it's very important to me. So I'm going to block the conversation. I'm going to go on this tangent, sidetrack, and talk about this other thing. That's the human condition. We're not computers. We can't just put in the right answer. The dialectic we have to master. And the mastery of the dialectic is applying it to the true and the false. So as we do the true, we will find it's like this. It's like all human endeavors. We have a goal, and there are steps to the goal. Anyone who says hope or belief or prayer is scamming you. You need actual steps. You have steps to reaching the goal. And as we follow those steps, like the dialectic, we hit blocks. Our job as philosophers, as human beings, is to do both. Now, the more we read the texts that we read on this channel, the better we are in understanding the goal, the better we are in learning the steps, and the better we are in facilitating the climbing of those steps through the dialectic. That's learning. But you also, as you practice, you have to take notes of the states of mind, your states of mind, or what's it feel like as a whole, or your ousia, and the words, the logos that come up about your block. Like when you say, I know what you'll think it's a belief, but I don't want you to think it's a belief. How's that feel? Write it down. Have a notepad or a document or something open where you can take these notes. Because as we read, we get the clues, we get the logos, the words, the clues to solve the puzzle about this, to solve that question. But the clues needed to solve our problem come from your own state of being. The pathologos, the sick logos, clues. So whatever blocks you from reading, whatever blocks you from the dialectic, whatever blocks you from concluding, whatever makes you not like that conclusion and want to throw it away, whatever takes you on a tangent, these are all clues that you are specifically here, according to the book that we've been reading, to address. Because those clues are clues about the false idea of self that's inconsistent with the self that has that goal. If you want to be a manager, because that goal, reaching that goal, knowing the self, is a kind of, requires you to be a certain kind of way. But if you want to be the manager, and you believe that you are rubbish and you've got nothing good to say and no one listens to you, you can't at the same time have this negative view of yourself and have that goal. You can't have that goal and be this image of yourself. They're not consistent. You can't be the manager while also thinking that you're rubbish. So as we go towards this goal, we're surfacing the false image of ourself and reality that's inconsistent with the self that can have this goal. And we need to address both. This one is called philosophical midwifery, the use of the dialectic to use those clues to piece it together, to trace that image of yourself back through your past to find out where you first learned it. And philosophy is the use of the dialectic to reach the truth. You have to be doing both. It's not a belief because it's something I have experienced. By the way, Jesus had a divine luminosity experience. Do you know what he thought that meant? He thought that meant he was the next king of the Jews. He was the Elijah coming back. Just because you have an experience of something doesn't mean that you've understood it. In fact, where does understanding come from? Is it anything to do with experience? Or is it specifically the ousia, the self-reflection, or ousia, and the understanding that you do, logos. These are what make us different from cattle and cabbages and caterpillars. We have the capacity to self-reflect on our experiences, and we have the capacity for language to understand our experiences. That's what makes us evolve. That's learning. So right, yeah, lots of people say, oh, I'm sexist because I have experienced that women suck. No, you haven't. You're using a belief to make sense of your experiences, but you're just doing it in a poor way. Something I've experienced, but because it's kind of a theory, and you have already expressed your opinions on that. Theories are good. Hypotheses are good. That's what we're here to do. What we're also learning is how do we make our understanding proper. You don't want to have Jesus' problem and say, well, I had this brilliant experience. I must be Elijah. I must be King of the Jews. You don't want that. In other words, having an experience is not the same as being able to make sense of it properly. The skill of understanding is the dialectic. That's how we form our understanding properly. That's the skill we're learning. It's a skill. How are we for time? Just check. Got a little bit more time. Right, that makes sense. I think it's fair to say that you will think it's a belief. Well, it's not a matter of what I think, it's a matter because we can use understanding and we can understand the difference between understanding, the difference between belief, it's a different cognitive function, and understanding. We can see for ourselves. See, beliefs for dum-dums. Beliefs are for babies. If it is a belief, then we can understand that it's a belief. And if it's a belief and you thought it was understanding, and you've been led to see that you were mistaken, then you've benefited. So you're not stuck in a belief. You can be free to perfect the skill of understanding, because beliefs are stagnant. They don't change because they're based on other people. Understanding you can perfect and learn and improve and do different, see it from more and more angles. It's a good thing. But I didn't learn it from some book or some religion. Great. But also the thing, it's a theology, not theory. But if it's an understanding, then you should be able to communicate that understanding in a way that anybody who follows the steps of reasoning that you go through will come to the same conclusion. That's neat. You can practice the dialectic. That's what we did earlier. You had a question about the self. And I asked you some basic questions that led to the same conclusion that anyone would come to if they were open to following those questions. But here's one of the most fundamental issues of the book we're reading. When you come to a new truth, you will not like it. You will fight against it. It will feel weird and different and not comfortable and not safe and not you and not real. The book points to that and says, hey, you know what? Who else had a new truth? Jesus. You know what Paul's reaction was? A wolf in sheep's clothing. Different to Luke, different to Mark, different to... Everyone had a different level of reaction to a new truth. We want to understand all of the possible reactions to truth that block us from following the dialectic and understanding. All of our blocks. That's our purpose as human beings. To surface all the blocks that human beings will throw up, which is nothing other than a loyalty to a family clan belief system from which you derived your own image of yourself and belief about reality. that blocks your own development through steps of reasoning and understanding. That if we were able to follow without impedance, if we were free, so we free ourselves from our blocks, allowing us to freely jump up these stairs, we will come to the same conclusion. That's understanding. And if the conclusion is that there's a self and a super self, then great. By the way, if there's a super self, is there something that has it? Because you've used the word self and you've added an adjective, super self. So are there two selves? Or what is it that has the two different selves? Humans have super selves. So what is it that has the super self? It's the other way around. Super self has human. Super selves have infinitesimal parts. So those parts would also have some sort of selfhood or existence. By the way, what is the self that has a super self, that has part? See where it goes? The evolved person in the form of a human being. By the way, what's experiencing the form of human being? Notice for all of these extra descriptions that you're giving, I'm just asking the same question. What is the self that has this experience? Super self experience, infinitesimal parts, evolved person. Isn't there something that has it? That is the self that evolved. Right, the self. So what is the self? That's our question. Also, the particle of self. So you're not talking about the self, you're talking about a piece of self. So I'm still asking about the self. What's the self? And it's important because we want to know whether or not your self is different from myself. Or the self of this chicken. Chicken self. Okay, and then this is the next part of the game. The next part of the game is the particle and radiance of the super selves. Again, do you see how you're describing qualities of something? I'm saying, what's the self? And you're saying, oh, forget the self, super self. Super then what? Go back to the self. What's the self? Oh, it has particles. It has radiance. It is an entity. Yeah, so what is it? What is this entity of self? By entity, what do you mean? Do you mean that it exists? Is it real? Does it have shape? By the way, you're a self. Can you just point to something? Because the other part of the game is it has consciousness. So you're talking about what it has. By the way, if you have a car, are you the same as your car? Or is a car just something you have? So when I am asking what is the self, and you say, oh, well, it has this, or it does this. See, this is the dialectic. So long as you're genuinely curious about the self, some people aren't. They think they already know. They're certain. They're believers. I know that I am Jesus, or I am Jesus's children, and or I know that Lord Xenu or the space spaghetti monster, and I'm a sinner because I'm a girl or whatever. We're not doing that. We're having a genuinely open, curious question that we can share together, and then we're following states or questions back and forth. I ask the question, you give the answer, I have to judge the answer, and once we're together, we can go to the next one. That will lead to truth. But, as we say, those unsuspected false beliefs, the no question, their beliefs, don't want this. Because we all grew up in a family. And that family had their own way of being. And you know what challenges the family way of being? Questions. Growth. That's the nature of human problems. So we also have to be alert for the states of mind and the words that come up to function as tangents or blocks to the dialectic that we practice. But also, it's difficult to ask these questions about things that exist like self, or beyond existence like self, or things that exist like being or mind, unless you're also reading the text. So that's why you have to be reading the text. Gives us a language that we can use. See, there's no idea of super self in the text. But if you look at the text, and if the idea of super self comes up in the text, then you can use it. It's like playing a video game. You're playing Silent Hill, and you find yourself at this big gate, and you know the next part of the game is beyond the gate. But the gate has a green lock. You're like, okay, I need to find the green key. You can't say, well, actually, I played this other game. I played Resident Evil, and I got a green key from Resident Evil, so I'm just going to bring that over. Doesn't work that way. The questions that we give birth to, we can give birth to while reading the text, and if it's a good text, then it should give us the logos or the clues or the material needed to answer the questions using the text itself. That's reading. That's why, for growth, you have to have a nose in one of these books. The Balboa translations of Plato or Pierre Grimes. As far as I can see, these are the only people who've mastered the logos. Now, thankfully, Plato wrote about conversations from other masters like Parmenides and Diotima who taught Socrates, so they're also good. The Symposium, we learn about Diotima. The Parmenides, we learn about Parmenides. But this book that we're reading is a goddamn motherfucking banger. Dear God, it's a masterpiece. Perhaps one of the greatest books ever written. So we're using the material from that to answer the questions that come up from that. Ideally. Now that's not to say that we can't meet each other where we're at. It helps if you're familiar with the text, so you've got some shared language. There are certain keywords we need. Like, for example, we need the word ousia, we need the word logos, we need the word dialectic, and we need the word the. Some cultures don't have the word the. So that's where we are in the book. We need a certain level of language to be able to participate. It also, as we've been saying, everyone is on this graph, meaning You will face your pathologos false beliefs about self and reality as blocks, interjections. So you have to have a familiarity with philosophical midwifery so you don't take the blame. It feels like he's not listening to me. It feels like he's asking me to talk about something I just can't see. Or he doesn't get it, or I'm not good enough, or I can't do this, I'm not a Socrates, I'm just a small being. That sort of stuff will come up. Literally, the book has helped us develop a dialectic to see that our reincarnation into this life will give us, because of, you were 3 years old once, and you had parents once, or parental surrogates once. Every human being develops a false belief about themselves and reality that becomes the guiding force in their life until they wake up to the dialectic. To the fact that they're in a repeating cycle of problems, which means it can be solved because it's a pattern. That means there's a cause, and you can trace it back to this. Our false image of ourself that's inconsistent with our highest state of being. In other words, the reason we reincarnated is because we were carrying a false image of self that we identified with that prevented our soul's further development and growth in higher dimensions, causing us to reincarnate into an unjust world. Not an unjust world because we have the ability to learn and change. And not unjust because, hey, maybe the injustice we suffered, we're on the other side of, that we were the ones doing in our previous life. So maybe there's a balance. Nevertheless, we're in a world where with the most unjust rule. Believers, the Abrahamic religions and politicians who have no understanding, have no desire to help anyone else, they are literally corrupt. By definition, because art's supposed to help the subjects, not the doctor. And every doctor requires an understanding and a knowledge of the model. Ain't no politician or religious figure that has that. So we're reincarnated into Hades, you might say, if you were to make a mythology about Earth, where we get a false image of ourselves and a false belief from our upbringing. That's the cause of our problems. And certain people are in positions of power where they can inflict that injustice on others, politicians and clergy especially, parents. Meaning our job is to do our best with a nose in the book, read a book that bangs anyway, to surface these questions about the true nature of self and reality, so that as we perfect the skill and art of dialectic, we can surface the false beliefs about self and reality that get in the way or block us, so that we can do our job and heal ourselves from what our soul has been carrying. So on this channel, we also read the Philosophical Midwifery book. We're about 5 chapters in. We took a pause to read this book. But that's the game. You'd be reading a text from Dr. Grimes or Socrates, someone who's a master. You can't learn chemistry unless you're reading a chemistry book. You also have to be doing philosophical midwifery and reading that book as well. And the third thing that's needed is dream analysis, because dream analysis gives you clues for both. Dream analysis helps for both. Your dreams give you high states of mind and being that help, as well as clues to help you in your upward movement, and it gives you clues about your negative states of mind and problems that block you. But the thing is, it's all the dialectic. The dialectic applied to truth, the dialectic to purify what's false, and the dialectic for both. It's the one art that we're here to master. Oh, and also sharing it. The principle, was it the law of truth, is that those who see the same say the same about the same. It's no good us keeping this to ourselves. We need to do our best to master it and share it. Tell stories, write songs, share and practice. So as soon as somebody meets these preconditions to participate in philosophical midwifery, in dream analysis to remove their problems, and philosophy, then it's my responsibility to practice the dialectic with them to help them practice it. This channel, in part, is helping people see what's needed to participate in the dialectic, the meaning of life, so that they can meet the conditions, so that we can play and have fun. If you want to remove your problems and your blocks to your relationships, your goals, your dreams, whatever it is you want, you have to be also reading, because blocks surface as you reach your most meaningful goals, and that includes, well, that especially is reading these books so you can solve these puzzles. You got to have your nose in a book. You got to have some familiarity with midwifery and why it's important. And you got to see be open to dream analysis, because that's where you start. Your dreams will tell you much more about your problems than you can tell me. So, having your nose in a book, which is why we read. Talking about also the negative, the blocks that come up, and emphasizing the role of dreams, as Socrates has been doing all through this goddamn banger of a book. 3 preconditions to play. I need people to play with. So, speaking of play, let me just check on something. All right. So I hope that was a bit of an overview. Because otherwise, I'm sure you've got a robust understanding of the super self. I can see that you're already using a language that includes wholes and parts, which is good. The idea of infinity is infinitesimal. That's a good idea. So you're including good language in your theory, or in your theology. But again, that's a lot of rabbit holes. I don't know where you're getting these terms from. I don't know your personal ideas. So we could go one of 2 ways. Stay in the book. Look for the questions in the book. Look for the key terms in the book. This is written by someone far wiser than you and me, so that probably is the best way of going. Or we can do what we started with and just try to use the terms themselves. So you notice all I was doing was using these words. So these don't apply to anything in particular. They're the nouns or the building blocks of understanding. So I said, can you point to anything different about the self that makes yourself different than me? Therefore, we would have to conclude that the self is the same. Then we went into, hey, here are these parts. There is a part, there is the super self, there is consciousness. These are all parts of the self. Oh, interesting. So let's go from the part to the whole self. What is the self that has the parts? You also brought up the idea of unlimited or infinite. We could have used that idea and talked about, hey, by the way, is the self infinite? Can it be defined? Does it have a limit then? What's the limit of the self? What's the reach of the self? So we're just using the nows. What about a word like bliss? There you go. That would go under the idea of goodness. Would be in this list. It's not a pair of terms. It's a single term, bliss. The experience. So actually that's a good one because that gets you in. It's these monads or onenesses under the captain of the basketball team or the leader of that set. Goodness. That motivates you. So if you've had an experience of bliss, that is a greater experience of goodness or excellence. I could ask you questions about that. Was it good? Was it real? That gives you the inspiration, the motivation. There has to be a reason why we play the game. And then we can ask, what was it that was blissful? Were you unlimited? Was there anything outside of you? The spiritual sky. So that's what you experienced, or you were the spiritual sky? Or you were a part, you were drawn into the spiritual sky. So there was a movement of time where you were a part moving into a whole. So there was a part where you weren't in it, a moment in time where you were moving into it more and more. Yeah. And then was there a moment where you were most in it? Or were you always different from the sky itself? Over a few seconds. So would you say there was a process of you moving from being unlike the spiritual sky to becoming more and more like it? It seemed like at that point it was all the same. So you moved from different to same. This is the other way of going. You were becoming it. So you were becoming the same as it. So there was a process of movement through time, becoming like or the same or whole from apart or different or unlike. So a kind of motion. Was there a end goal? Did you go from a motion of becoming into it to being at rest? I looked into the stars and we were drawn into the light. So this is the other way of going. We can use these fundamental terms of logos or understanding to reflect on our highest experience, to make sense of it. But again, we have to be in the book so we can, once we've understood what kind of experience it was, we can place it within the model. Within the model. Was it an experience in the physical world of becoming? Like a really good one, a really insightful one? Were you separating from your physical senses and experiencing mind itself? Or were you going out of, if this is experience, were you entering into the self? Because each of these three levels of reality have their own language and their own variety of experience. So was it an experience? If it was an experience, then we can put it somewhere in here. Could be a significant experience of the physical world, or it could be a level of experience of mind or consciousness or being. At the height of it, it was only light and bliss, bliss that increased every moment. Interesting. So there was bliss, but there were degrees of bliss of that single experience, or stages that you recognized. Or maybe it was hard to recognize in the experience, but afterwards, in this kind of reflection, you can realize, hang on, yeah, even though it was the same thing, there was, what would you say, depth of experience that you were moving into, which would indicate stages of development or stages of depth in that experience. By bliss is happiness that doubles with every moment of perception. Right, so this one was double the last one, and this one was double. So it was some kind of exponential growth the more you went into that experience, or the more that you became like that experience. Yeah, neat. So what we want to do is, by reading this book, or these books that we read here, I forgot everything else. Yeah. See, your description through this reflection that we've gone through today, you should be able to find matching the conversation that Socrates and Jesus have been having in this book. The forgetting of your false beliefs. Socrates went on to say, hey, one of the things that prevents people from going into that experience is they're afraid of losing themselves. So if they think that they are this ego or image of themselves, they might block themselves because they don't want to forget their image. So he talks about what's needed to go into that experience, but as you're recognizing, there seems to be depth. There is a significance in understanding it after the event so that you can get back there and maybe go into it in greater depth. And what Socrates and Jesus are talking about right now on page 190 is, hey, if there is this experience which has stages or depth to it, which has a process of coming into a oneness or a whole from parts, there's a whole bunch of qualities that itself has to have a higher cause. If this thing was real, what's the cause of reality? And that's what we have on the board. We have a Venn diagram between there's some self in yellow here having an experience as you move into greater and greater levels of experience of what is or what exists. And if that's the case, then we can ask the question, what in the heck is that which is beyond even experience? What's the cause of what you experienced? Or what's having what you experienced? Which is itself not an experience. Which is very, very tricky because all of the language or logos that we've used up until that point have all been used to describe an experience. You trying to explain that experience to someone who's only experienced the physical world, they're going to find it difficult because their logos or language is only about the physical world. Right. You theorize that it's the spiritual side experiencing itself. So what this book gives us is a language to nail down that experience in understanding. So you would say spiritual sky experiencing itself, but Socrates might say, hey, you know what that is? It's the good experiencing itself as the idea of the good. Now again, that's a new language. But do you see, without a culture and a society that does true philosophy, what we do here, you have to kind of make up your own language. That's the significance of reading books written by a master of the Logos, Socrates or Pierre Grimes. He gives us the language that we need. Yeah, because otherwise it'd be very difficult, because you don't know whether it's like actual legitimate or how much of your own beliefs. Like, you don't want to experience that divine luminosity and say, I experienced Mother Mary and now I'm never going to be non-Catholic because it was, or I experienced the face of Allah, it was pure bliss. People do that. Jesus did that because his language lacked certain key words that are needed to reflect on the experience. That's why we read the book. I don't want to do that. That's fantastic. Good for you. And that's why there's there's four, but there are two fundamental processes in what we do. We read the book so we can gain the language or logos and the art of dialectic to nail down our understanding of that experience, which allows you to integrate it, allows you to get back there even, maybe at greater depth. That's philosophy. We also have to be getting rid of all of the false beliefs or blocks or negative ideas of yourself that limit you getting back there or make you make sense of it in the wrong way. I'm never not going to be a Muslim now. I experienced the face of Allah. You don't want that. So midwifery, philosophy, and Socrates has been hammering in all through this book the significance of dream analysis, because that's our guide for both. And of course saying, hey, do your best to talk about it. That's where we are in the book. Saying, the law of truth requires those who know the same, say the same about the same. So we're getting the same language so that we can say the same about that same experience, so that we can be the same and experience it again, understand it. And if it's a true model of reality, then wouldn't we want to act according to it? If it's a model of beauty, don't we want to use it as our model for our beautiful creations? If it's an experience of bliss, don't we want to get back in there in our loving relationships? Say the same about the same. That's where we are. And that's where we'll call it for today. Thank you for sharing your experience and your thoughts and your reflections. I hope you've got lots to think about. And I might have another stream in a few hours, depending on how I feel. I'm a bit under the weather. But I think that's where I'll call it for today. Thank you so much. And I will see you in the next one. Feel free to join the Discord. You'll get a notification when we go live. And you can find the PDF to the text below. And if you want to donate to the channel, that is greatly appreciated and it is a big help. Thanks once again, and I'll see you in the next one.